Hey, Jennifer Batten here from Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck's bands, answering some questions about Jeff. Played guitar with Jeff for 3 years and appeared on 2 albums. On these albums, you're credited as composer. What was your involvement in composing and recording process during the studio sessions, especially on Earthquake? Well, I spent all my waking hours that I wasn't traveling. I did spend a hell of a lot of time in London, and the band would rehearse 5 days a week, and so I was by myself for a couple days and would just do nothing but write. Jeff was always, he has a voracious appetite for new material, constantly. So Earthquake, I just came up with that groove, and I think the song, it's been years since I heard it, but the song had about 5 different sections, and Jeff liked 2 of the 5, I think. So he took his favorite parts, and I had some spoken word on top of that. So it was just one of the ones that he liked, and he turned it into a Jeff tune, really. The other one was, I wrote a song called In the Aftermath that ended up on my Whatever CD, DVD. And it was so close to being on Jeff's record, but actually that song and that groove morphed into the song Loose Cannon, which is awesome. And during those sessions, it was really fascinating to watch the producer and Jeff work together, because basically most of the stuff was grooves, especially the You Had It Coming record. They hired a really killer drum programmer that would come up with great grooves, and then Jeff would just react to them. So the guy would come up with something, send it across the hallway to the producer and Jeff would just groove and jam on it, and the producer was really good and really fast at hearing what could actually become a verse from his jamming and a chorus, and just slammed them together really effectively, and it really inspired my record, Whatever. So most of the stuff I wrote on Whatever was for Jeff, except for 1 or 2 tracks. So Earthquake, yeah. So we ended up playing that on the tour, and Loose Cannon as well. That I really dug what happened to Loose Cannon live. It was really cool with Andy Gangadine on drums. As a guitarist, what do you think of Jeff's right-hand technique? All of his technique is just very original and whacked. In fact, his bridge is set up so it kind of angles up this way that allows him to pull the bar back and play melodies with harmonics. His guitar is set up really strangely, and a lot of times for vibrato, he has his hand back here and he'll push on the bridge for vibrato instead of actually using the bar. I've played his guitar through his Marshall. I would go in early to rehearsals a lot and spend time with the guitar and amp, and it's in your hands. Let's say 95% of the sound is in your hands, and the gear definitely has something to do with it as well. You're well known for the double tapping, 8-finger tapping technique. And when I was at Musicians Institute, Steve Lynch was in my class, who ended up in a band called Autograph. And during the year, we would get seminars once a month from monster players. And 1 month, it was Emmett Chapman, who invented the Chapman stick. And that instrument has 5 bass strings, 5 melody strings, and it's all tapped, so there's no picking involved. And Steve, 60 students, we're trying to learn guitar. We had no interest in getting a stick. And Steve didn't either, but just from seeing the tapping, he started experimenting on guitar. And he started coming up with a system. And eventually he taught me the system, and it just set me free to just go in all kinds of different directions. So I ended up doing Flight of the Bumblebee, Giant Steps. Then the next part of the question is about Nicholas Slonimsky's Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns book. That was a crazy book that was ignored for a while when it came out, until John Coltrane and Eddie Harris and some of the jazzers got a hold of it. And looking at the paper, it reads like fly poop. It's written on piano, so a lot of the stuff in there starts below the guitar register and goes above the guitar register. So Joe DiOrio was a guitar player that played with Eddie Harris, who was into that book. And he came up with all kinds of wacky ways to, for instance, it was a very mathematical approach to music. And because of that, it really opened up possibilities. So, for instance, here's a concept I love that's an ass kicker. If you have a chromatic scale, and you displace certain notes, like instead of playing those in the same octave, if you take that B flat and take that down an octave, it's just like a whole new thing. So these wide intervallic jumps really sounded fresh to my ear, just like tapping. So I wanted to jump into it, and I use them together, where I'll use, for instance, the beginning of Giant Steps, the tune that's ended up on my first record. The first harmony is B major. So I took a B major triad, add 9. And then with the right hand, I went up 5 frets and copied the exact same shape and just pulled right to left. So that had a huge influence on me, the intervallic stuff, and eventually ended up in what did I do, 30 licks or 50 licks for truefire.com. That's all intervallic stuff. But rather than having it work for jazz, I have a whole lot of bends, so it's kind of more geared for rock and pop. Tell us more about your gear and amps and guitars and effects. I have been using for the last 3 or 4 years this Washburn Parallax guitar, which I heard recently they are no longer selling, but I really dig it. It's the first 24 fret guitar I've ever owned. What you see on here are actually stickers by a company called Neck Illusions. You can get custom stickers. It's individual stickers that you can put on between the frets, and it doesn't leave any residue on the wood. They must have spent a long time figuring out the process to make that work. But I have a bunch of different designs, and I have found that having fret markers really helps in low light. I have some more exotic designs, but they can screw me up live. This is a Batten string damper you can get on my website that I use for tapping. So I use it for almost everything now, but I started using it for tapping. So for instance, listen to the noise. It's just out of control when you have all the fingers busy. Now I put it down, and so it controls the open strings from ringing out, and I can just flip it out of the way with my thumb if I need harmonics or open strings. For an amp, I was the first customer for a Blue guitar. Thomas Blug used to design amps for Hughes and Kettner for 25, 27 years, and came up with this revolutionary, less than 3-pound analog amp that's 4-channel, MIDI capable. It's just a revolution. And I always thought when I'm traveling, there's got to be a way that I can control my sound instead of just getting whatever amp is provided or taking a digital processor. So when I saw that, I was at his house and I played through it and I go, when can I have one? So it was actually torture waiting the 6 months or a year until the prototype turned into an amp that was for sale. So I've been using that ever since. I actually have 3 of them. I keep one at my studio ready to go all the time. I take one traveling, and I live in Portland, Oregon, and I send one around to all my fellow guitar players in town to check it out. Because it's such a revolution. People think it's a pedal, they think it's a preamp, but it is a 100-watt full-on head. And I am between systems and have been for about 2 years. I got the Digitech RP1000 I'm using for effects. And I used it for a long time, and there are certain effects that I really love that I can't get in my other system, which is line 6 HX stomp that I'm using for effects, using the 4-cable method with both systems that I use. I'm using the 4-cable method. So you can choose what effects are before the preamp and what effects are between the preamp and the power amp. So here's one of the effects I really dig is called swell. It's an automatic volume swell. So you pick and the volume continues to go up, which sounds really ethereal. And there's another one called a talker that I just love, that there's not any company in the world that comes close to getting it, although they state that they have it. They call it the vocal formant in line 6. But it doesn't ever sound as vocal or controllable as it is with the Digitech. So I'm opening up the filter with my foot. So since I don't sing, that's a sound that I like to use a lot. Let's see. And when I am using the HX Stomp, which I'm using with a cover band, I also have the soft step MIDI switcher, which weighs 1 pound, very small, very convenient, and I change patches with that. Because on the Stomp itself, it's not real versatile. If you have a lot of different sounds that you want to use, it's just kind of fussy to get from one sound to the other without some kind of patch changer. All right, in Still on the Run, the Jeff Beck story, Rosie Bones says Jeff always supported young artists, especially women. His relationship with female musicians is underlined in that DVD. The French version of the Wikipedia presents me as one of the few women in the very masculine circle of guitar heroes. What does it mean to you to be a female guitar hero in a world of male guitarists? You know, I don't give it a whole lot of thought about being a hero. I only think about it when women write to me and tell me I'm the reason that they got started playing guitar. Because back in my day, I didn't know it was such a rare thing for women to play as a career. There was a period, I think during World War II, that tons of women musicians were playing jazz and playing in big bands. And then when the guys came back, things changed and there weren't so many anymore. I thought when I joined Michael Jackson in 1987 that was the revolution. Wendy and Lisa had played with Prince. I was with Michael, some of the biggest acts on earth, and Billy Idol, or Billy, who was it? Billy Idol? Yeah, maybe it was him. They had a female keyboard player in the MTV videos. So I thought a change was afoot. But 20 years went by and there wasn't much change. Now, with the internet, now that everybody has high-speed internet and has access to all these different lessons, and people like Pete Thorne that will walk you through gear and how to dial in your amp. David Wallerman, that has some really great lessons on his YouTube channel. There are girls young and old around the world that are super kicking ass. So it's a long way from being 50-50 balanced, but there's a lot more of us now. It was actually kind of lonely out there back in the 80s. So it's about time that there's a lot more of them. But yeah, Jeff was great. I was the first of a long line, and probably still in the future there will be more female players that he appreciates. Very respectful. Rhonda Smith has been playing bass with him for quite a long time now. And Rosie Bones, that band had a couple women in there. There was a great vibe to that band. And he had a female violinist at one point. So it takes guys like that that are very open-minded to make it okay for others to get women in their band. because especially rock and roll and aggressive music has been thought as such a masculine thing. But I think as we evolve as humans, that men realize their feminine side a lot more. It's safer to do that now. And likewise, women can get into their more masculine side and have a more balanced life, really. So bless him and Michael Jackson for being open to having a female on stage in a big way. Does it make any sense to present you as a female guitar hero? You know, that kind of thing is something promoters do. You know, to make everybody sound like a superhero so they get butts in seats. That's what that is about. I suppose on the one hand, if you call somebody a guitar hero, it just means they've had some influence and have inspired others. And that's, I can't say it's a goal, but I know what it feels like for me to be inspired by others. And man, to get fired up because you're hearing somebody do something super fresh and exciting is, to a musician, that's as good as it gets. So if I've done that for people, great. Anything to add? Yes, I, since lockdown, have started to do a guitar symposium. It's called Guitar Cloud Symposium, and it can be found at www.guitarcloudsymposium.com. And I'm going to be doing it every 2 months. I launched in August, and the first one I had Neely Brosh, just a bruising monster of a player, played with Tony McAlpine and Death Clock and Cirque du Soleil. Gretchen Menn, great player, several records out that are very innovative. And she has toured a lot with a Led Zeppelin tribute called Zepparella. And Vicky Genfan is a very innovative acoustic guitar player that does a lot with slap, tap, and harmonics, and also has a great singing voice. So we launched August 7th, and it was a blast. I was real nervous about it, especially because of the tech, hoping that nothing went wrong and the servers went down and all that kind of stuff. But we got people from all over the world, and each of us, I designed it like TED.com talks, where each talk is 20 minutes, and that's it. So everything you have to say about your favorite subjects, and we each got 6 each over the weekend, had to be in 20 minutes. So each teacher did 3 chunks of 20, which made an hour, followed by a half-hour Q&A session. And I also added a virtual jam where we had a bunch of guitar players, and it's virtual, and latency is still a problem, so you can't groove together online. So one day I did a blues where I would play 4 bars, and then I would comp for 4 bars while the people out in cyberspace played. And then I would play my 4, just trading 4s with them for 6 or 7 minutes to give people a chance to, with their instruments, to actually play with a groove. And the next day I did another groove that was one of my own tracks. And we give them PDFs and CD downloads. I did a bunch of videos that they could see after the fact. And there was a bunch of sponsor giveaways. And we're going to fire it up again. One person won a Luna guitar worth $729. One person won the Thomas Blug Blue Guitar amp, which is about $800. We had, every person got a guitar strap. We had so many cool giveaways, customized guitar capos and discounts to this and that, all access passes to truefire.com. So it's become a real event, and people really dug it. The testimonials are on the ticketing page. And you can go there and click on schedule and see what everybody is teaching. This time, it's the same lineup, except Neely is off doing a recording project. So we now have Angela Petrilli taking over. She's going to do some beginning slide guitar. And it's just so cool because all of us teachers want to learn what the other teachers are doing, as well as all the other students. So that's what I got going on now. I have no idea when lockdown is going to be over. So I am just planning my life online. It's a virtual world now.